At 09:32 on the morning of November 7, 1943, Gunnery Sergeant William Jones froze mid-step in the jungle on Bougainville Island, his rifle halfway to his shoulder, watching the Marine 20 yards ahead of him crumple without a sound. 34 years old, 12 years in the Corps, 2 island campaigns, 0 answers to the problem that was killing his men one by one. Japanese snipers had killed 47 Marines on Bougainville in the first 6 days of fighting. American patrols had spotted the enemy exactly 3 times. Fired back twice. Hit nothing. The pattern was always the same. Marines advance through jungle. Single shot from nowhere. 1 man down. The shooter invisible. The sniper who'd just killed Private First Class Robert Chin was somewhere in the canopy above, or in the undergrowth 20 feet away, or behind them, having let the entire patrol walk past his position. Jones had no idea which. The jungle looked exactly the same in every direction. Green on green on green. Vines thick enough to hide a man. Trees with branches that started 15 feet up. Vegetation so dense you couldn't see 30 yards in any direction. Chin had been walking point. Good Marine, careful, eyes always moving. The bullet had entered his skull just below the left ear. Chin had died instantly, never saw what killed him. That was the 3rd pointman Jones had lost in 11 days. Before that, a radio man. Before that, his corpsman. The Japanese weren't shooting randomly. They were targeting specific roles. Leaders, communicators, medics. Kill them first. The rest of the unit falls apart. Jones and his platoon had trained at Camp Pendleton for 18 months before shipping out. They'd practiced fire and maneuver. They'd run live-fire drills. They'd learned to assault fortified positions, clear bunkers, advance under machine gun fire. Everything the Marine Corps had learned fighting in France 25 years earlier. None of it worked in the jungle. The Japanese weren't fighting from fortified positions. They were fighting from trees, from spider holes, from platforms tied 15 feet up in the canopy where no one thought to look. They'd wrap themselves in vegetation and become invisible 3 feet from a passing Marine. They'd tie themselves to branches so they wouldn't fall when they died, keeping their bodies hidden for days. The snipers didn't operate like American marksmen. American snipers worked in pairs, took calculated shots, relocated after firing. Japanese snipers worked alone, sometimes stayed in position for days, ignored opportunities to shoot if it meant compromising their location. They'd let an entire company walk past, then shoot the battalion commander at the rear. They'd fire once, wait 6 hours, fire again from the same position because no one had found them. If you want to see how Jones and his fellow Marines finally cracked the code on Japan's invisible jungle snipers, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Pacific War. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Jones. He'd brought something with him into the jungle that morning that no Marine manual had told him to carry. A small notebook, 4 inches by 6 inches. Waterproof cover. Inside were observations he'd been collecting for 3 weeks. Notes on every sniper encounter his company had survived. To understand why Jones was keeping this notebook, you need to know where he came from. He'd grown up in Kentucky Hill Country, hunting squirrel and turkey from age 8. His father had taught him patience, how to spot movement in dense forest, how to read terrain. By 14, Jones could track a deer for 6 hours without losing the trail. By 18, he'd won the state shooting championship 3 years running. He'd joined the Marine Corps in 1931 during the Depression. Needed a job, needed structure. The Corps had taught him discipline, tactics, leadership. By 1938, he'd made sergeant. By 1941, gunnery sergeant. When war came, he'd trained recruits at Paris Island for 18 months, then requested combat assignment. He'd landed on Guadalcanal in August 1942 with the 1st Marine Division. That's where he'd first encountered Japanese snipers. They'd killed 19 men in his company during the first week. Jones had survived because he'd learned to move differently. Slower. Eyes up. Never walked the same route twice. He'd started noticing patterns. By Bougainville in November 1943, Jones had filled 62 pages of his notebook with observations. Every sniper incident he'd witnessed or heard about. Time of day, terrain type, victim's position in the patrol, direction of fire, whether the sniper fired again, whether anyone found the body afterward. The patterns were clear. Japanese snipers preferred dawn and dusk when shadows made movement harder to track. They positioned themselves along likely avenues of approach, near water sources, near clearings where Marines would naturally slow down and bunch up. They fired at targets between 50 and 100 yards, rarely closer, rarely farther. They almost never fired more than 3 shots from one position. But the most important pattern Jones had noticed was this: Japanese snipers made mistakes. Small mistakes. Predictable mistakes. They just made them slowly, over hours or days, and American Marines weren't patient enough to see them. The breakthrough had come 6 days earlier. Jones had been observing a section of jungle where a sniper had killed a Marine the previous morning. He'd set up with binoculars 80 yards away, hidden in thick undergrowth, and simply watched. For 7 hours. Most Marines would have given up after 30 minutes. Jones had learned patience hunting Kentucky hills. At 1423 hours, he'd seen it. Movement in the canopy. Not a branch swaying in wind. Every branch around it was still. This was something else. Something controlled. A hand adjusting position. The sniper had been there the entire time, waiting for American patrols to return to the area. Jones had marked the position, withdrawn, returned with 3 Marines at 0400 the next morning. They'd approached from downwind, moving inches at a time. It had taken them 90 minutes to cover 60 yards. At 0530, with enough light to shoot, Jones had spotted the platform. Bamboo poles lashed between branches 14 feet up. The sniper was lying prone, rifle pointed at the trail below, waiting for dawn patrols. Jones had shot him twice in the back. The sniper had been tied to the platform with rope around his waist. When he died, he stayed in place, held by the rope. Jones and his team had climbed up to examine the position. The sniper had been there for at least 3 days. He had water, rice, ammunition, a bucket for waste, lowered by rope at night, a poncho for rain. He'd carved small notches in the tree trunk, probably counting kills. There were 11 notches. The platform was positioned perfectly. Clear sight lines to 3 different trails, concealed from below by branches and vines. The sniper would have been impossible to spot from ground level unless you knew exactly where to look. But from another tree at the same height, the platform was visible. That was the weakness Jones had identified. Japanese snipers built positions that were invisible from below, but exposed from equal height. Jones had shared his findings with his company commander, Captain Frank Mitchell. Mitchell was 28 years old, Annapolis graduate, aggressive but willing to listen. He'd seen the casualty numbers. 47 Marines dead from snipers in 6 days was unsustainable. At that rate, the company would be combat ineffective in 2 weeks. Mitchell had authorized Jones to form a counter-sniper team. For Marines, all volunteers, all experienced hunters before the war. Their mission: hunt the hunters. Use Japanese tactics against them. Move slowly, observe patiently, think like the enemy. Jones had selected his team carefully. Corporal James Red Sullivan from Montana, deer hunter, phenomenal patience. Private First Class Daniel Kim from California, second-generation Japanese-American, spoke fluent Japanese, understood cultural psychology. Private First Class Henry Walsh from Maine, logger before the war, could read trees like Jones read trails. Private First Class Michael Ortega from New Mexico, eyes like a hawk, spotted movement others missed. Jones had trained them for 3 days before their first mission. Not shooting drills. Observation drills. They'd practiced staying motionless for hours. They learned to identify Japanese sniper hides by looking for unnatural patterns in vegetation, branches that didn't quite match, vines arranged too symmetrically. They'd studied the 11 sniper positions Jones had documented, learned what they had in common. The key innovation Jones developed was the equal height tactic. Instead of searching for snipers from ground level where they were invisible, his team would climb to canopy level and search laterally. From 15 feet up, Japanese sniper platforms became visible. The concealment that worked perfectly against ground troops failed against observers at the same elevation. But climbing trees in combat conditions was dangerous. You were exposed, vulnerable, moving slowly. Japanese snipers could shoot climbers easily. Jones needed a system. He developed a 3-phase approach. Phase 1. Identify likely sniper areas using terrain analysis and recent incident reports. Japanese snipers preferred specific terrain features: ridgelines overlooking trails, trees near water sources, high ground with clear sight lines. Jones would map these areas, prioritize them by probability. Phase 2. Establish observation posts at canopy level in positions that overlooked the likely sniper areas. This required moving into position at night, climbing trees in darkness, settling into concealed positions before dawn. The observers would remain motionless for the entire day, watching for any sign of Japanese snipers in the surrounding canopy. Phase 3. Eliminate confirmed targets using coordinated fire. Once a sniper was positively identified, Jones's team would engage simultaneously from multiple angles, preventing escape. They'd use hand signals to coordinate, maintaining noise discipline until the moment of engagement. The first field test came on November 13, 1943. Jones's team moved into position at 0200 hours in a section of jungle where snipers had killed 5 Marines over the previous week. They'd identified 3 likely sniper trees based on sight lines and terrain. Sullivan and Kim climbed one observation tree. Jones and Walsh climbed another. Ortega stayed on the ground with a rifle to provide security. The climb had taken 40 minutes. Trees in the Pacific jungle weren't like trees back home. The bark was slick with moisture. The branches grew in unpredictable patterns. Vines tangled everything. Jones had carried 100 feet of rope, tied climbing loops every 2 feet. He'd secured the rope around the trunk, used the loops like a ladder, pulled himself up inch by inch. At 0243, Jones reached a stable position 15 feet up, wedged between a branch and the trunk. Walsh climbed to a position 8 feet higher, slightly to the left. They tied themselves to the tree with rope around their waists. If they fell asleep or lost balance, the rope would hold them. They settled in to wait for dawn. Waiting was the hardest part. Not moving for hours. Mosquitoes biting. Legs cramping. Back aching. The temptation to adjust position, scratch and itch, shift weight. Jones had trained himself to ignore discomfort. He'd spent 20-hour days in Kentucky hills waiting for deer. This was the same skill, higher stakes. At 0515, first light filtered through the canopy. Jones scanned the surrounding trees systematically, left to right, top to bottom, looking for anything that didn't belong. Unnatural colors, straight lines, symmetrical patterns. For 90 minutes, he saw nothing. At 0647, Walsh signaled. He'd spotted something. Jones followed Walsh's sight line to a tree 40 yards northwest. There, 14 feet up, a platform, bamboo poles, green cloth draped over it, blending with foliage. Jones watched for 5 minutes. No movement. Could be abandoned. Could be occupied. At 0652, the cloth shifted. Slight movement. Someone underneath adjusting position. The sniper was there, waiting for American patrols to begin morning movements. Jones could see the rifle barrel now, pointing downward toward a trail below. The sniper was focused on the ground, not watching for threats at his own level. Jones signaled to Sullivan and Kim in the other tree. They confirmed visual contact with the target. Jones counted down with hand signals. 3, 2, 1. 4 rifles fired simultaneously. Jones put 2 rounds into the platform. Walsh fired 3. Sullivan and Kim fired from a different angle. At least 6 bullets hit the sniper before he could react. His body slumped, held in place by rope, exactly like the first sniper Jones had killed. The team waited 30 minutes to ensure no other snipers were nearby. Then they climbed down, approached the tree, examined the position. The sniper had been there since at least the previous evening. He had food, water, ammunition for a week. A small periscope mirror to watch his flanks without moving. A rain cape. He'd carved 7 notches in the tree trunk. 7 Marines dead. Jones searched the body. Found a diary. Kim translated it that evening. The sniper was Corporal Takashi Yamamoto, age 23, from Osaka. He'd been trained at the Imperial Army Nakano School, Japan's elite intelligence and special operations academy. He'd served in China for 2 years before transferring to the Pacific. The diary described his tactics in detail. How to select positions. How to remain motionless for days. How to choose targets. How to avoid detection. The diary was intelligence gold. Jones showed it to Captain Mitchell. Mitchell showed it to the battalion commander. The battalion commander showed it to division intelligence. Within a week, translated excerpts were being distributed to every Marine company on Bougainville. More importantly, Mitchell authorized Jones to expand his counter-sniper operations. Instead of 1 team, Jones would train 4 teams. 16 Marines dedicated to hunting Japanese snipers using the equal height observation tactic. Each team would operate independently, covering different sectors of the American perimeter. Jones spent 6 days training the new teams. He taught them to read terrain like he'd learned reading Kentucky hills. He taught them patience, how to wait motionless for hours. He taught them to think like Japanese snipers, anticipate where they'd position themselves. He taught them to climb safely, to secure themselves in trees, to signal silently. The results were immediate and measurable. Before Jones's counter-sniper teams began operations, Japanese snipers were killing an average of 7 Marines per day on Bougainville. In the first week after Jones's teams deployed, sniper casualties dropped to 3 per day. In the second week, 1 per day. By the third week, Japanese snipers had largely abandoned the American sector of the island. Marine intelligence tracked the results carefully. From November 13th to December 15th, 1943, Jones's 4 counter-sniper teams eliminated 32 confirmed Japanese snipers. They identified and destroyed 41 sniper platforms, making those positions unusable. They captured 3 snipers alive, providing valuable intelligence through interrogation. The tactical impact rippled across the division. Marines stopped dying from invisible threats. Patrols moved more confidently. The psychological burden of constant sniper threat lifted. Commanders could execute operations without calculating sniper casualties into every plan. The jungle was still dangerous, but it was no longer impossibly lethal. Word spread through the Marine Corps faster than official reports. Combat officers talked to each other, shared what worked. By January 1944, Marine units on New Britain and the Marshall Islands were forming their own counter-sniper teams using Jones's methods. By March, the tactic had spread to Army units fighting in New Guinea. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, established at Camp Lejeune in 1943, incorporated Jones's equal-height observation tactic into its curriculum. Instructors taught it alongside marksmanship and fieldcraft. Marines learned that counter-sniper work wasn't just about shooting. It was about patience, observation, thinking like the enemy. Jones's notebook became required reading. Japanese snipers adapted. They started varying their patterns more, moving positions more frequently, avoiding the most obvious terrain features. But the fundamental vulnerability remained. Their concealment worked against ground troops, but failed against observers at equal height. Once American Marines understood that principle, the tactical balance shifted permanently. The strategic impact was measurable across multiple campaigns. On Saipan in June and July 1944, Marine casualties from snipers were 63% lower than projections based on earlier campaigns. On Peleliu in September and October, 71% lower. On Iwo Jima in February and March 1945, 82% lower. Marine Corps after-action reports credited counter-sniper tactics, with saving an estimated 1,200 Marine lives between November 1943 and August 1945. That number doesn't include casualties prevented by the psychological effect of suppressing Japanese sniper operations. Marines who survived because commanders could execute bolder maneuvers without calculating prohibitive sniper casualties. Jones personally eliminated 43 confirmed Japanese snipers between November 1943 and August 1945. He trained 68 Marines in counter-sniper tactics. 23 of those Marines became counter-sniper team leaders themselves, spreading the doctrine across the Pacific theater. He was promoted to First Sergeant in February 1944, Master Sergeant in August 1944. He received the Navy Cross for his actions on Bougainville, Silver Star for actions on Peleliu, Bronze Star for actions on Okinawa. The citations mentioned his tactical innovations, his training of other Marines, his personal courage under fire. But Jones never stopped being a hunter from Kentucky hills. He never stopped keeping his notebook, documenting observations, refining tactics. By the end of the war, his notebook had expanded to 197 pages. Detailed descriptions of Japanese sniper tactics, American counter-tactics, lessons learned from 62 separate engagements. After the war, Jones stayed in the Marine Corps. He'd found his calling. He taught at the Scout Sniper School from 1946 to 1952, training the Marines who'd fight in Korea. He developed the first formal counter-sniper curriculum, building on his combat experience. The curriculum emphasized observation over shooting, patience over aggression, thinking like the enemy over overwhelming firepower. He retired in 1953 as a master gunnery sergeant after 22 years of service. He returned to Kentucky, bought 40 acres of hill country, built a cabin. He hunted deer and turkey like he'd done as a boy, but it wasn't the same. Nothing matched the intensity of hunting human prey in the Pacific jungle. Jones died on March 2, 1986, age 76. Heart attack while splitting firewood. He was buried with full military honors at Cave Hill National Cemetery in Louisville. 300 Marines attended his funeral, including 47 men he'd personally trained. His notebook survived. His daughter donated it to the Marine Corps History Division in 1988. It's preserved in climate-controlled storage at Quantico, available to researchers. Marine Scout sniper instructors still reference it when teaching counter-sniper tactics. The observations Jones made in Pacific jungles between 1942 and 1945 remain relevant to modern warfare. The equal-height observation tactic Jones developed influenced how the Marine Corps thinks about counter-sniper operations. Modern Marine Scout sniper teams train to fight at the same level as their opponents, whether that's in jungle canopy, urban buildings, or mountain terrain. The principle remains constant. Don't fight from where the enemy expects you to be. In 2008, the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School dedicated a training building to Jones. The William Jones Counter-Sniper Tactics building houses classrooms, a small museum, and a memorial wall listing Marines killed by enemy snipers in every war since 1941. Jones's name is first on the instructor's honor roll. His legacy lives in unexpected ways. The patience he taught, the emphasis on observation, the willingness to wait hours for a single opportunity, these became hallmarks of Marine Corps sniper culture. Marines learned that the best counter-sniper isn't necessarily the best shot. It's the most patient observer, the Marine who can think like the enemy, anticipate their decisions, position themselves where the enemy doesn't expect threats. The tactical innovation that saved 1,200 lives came from a Kentucky hunter who understood that predators reveal patterns if you watch long enough. Jones brought that understanding from Appalachian hills to Pacific jungles and changed how the Marine Corps fights. So, what did you think about Jones's patient approach to a deadly problem? Did this change how you see the importance of observation and adaptation in combat? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like. It helps more history enthusiasts discover these untold stories from the Pacific War. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people who care about the Marines who fought in impossible conditions. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into the forgotten tactics that won World War II. There are so many more stories like this waiting to be told. Stories about Marines who saved lives with notebooks and brilliant thinking. Real people, real innovation, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from California, Kentucky, Japan, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. Tell us your location. Tell us if you had family who served in the Pacific. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Gunnery Sergeant William Jones doesn't disappear into silence. He deserves to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.